that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and welcome to WION World is One. You're watching Gravitas with me, Haim Saroya. Let's get started. Our top story on the show tonight. We look at what has happened in Bangladesh in the last 24 hours and we ask, what happens next? Bangladesh is currently without a government. Where do things go from here? Stay tuned for that report. Also on the show, as fears of a wider war in West Asia loom, Iran has now asked Russia for help. And as per reports, Russia has acquiesced. Russia, in fact, has started the delivery of some equipment. How does this change the geopolitical landscape in West Asia? We will find out. And also, the Indian rupee is at an all-time low. What triggered this slump and what does that mean for you? We'll decode that for you on the show in a few minutes from now. Also on the show, we will bring you a shocking tale of revenge, one that has gripped Chinese social media platforms and has sparked a controversy. Stay tuned for that report. Bangladesh is a country without a government. Dhaka is desperate for government to end chaos, death, mayhem, day after a massive public uprising toppled Sheikh Hasina's government. The president has dissolved the parliament, clearing the way for elections in the country. For now, the military is in control. The youth that ousted Hasina do not want a military-led government in their country. They want Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus to lead the caretaker government. So the question is, what comes next? Who will fill the power vacuum left by Prime Minister's resignation? Who will lead the next government in the crisis-hit country? The situation raises some important questions, but chief among them is the question of, will the student-led revolution bring much-needed stability to Bangladesh, or will crisis spiral to the point of no return? All eyes are on Dhaka. Here's what has happened today. Hours after protesting student leaders set a deadline, President Mohammad Shahabuddin dissolved the parliament. A statement from the President's office also said that Hasina's arch-rival and former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Khaleda Zia, had been freed from house arrest. As the day went on, thousands of jailed protesters were also freed. In a statement, President Shahabuddin said that an interim government would hold elections as soon as possible after consulting all parties and stakeholders. After Monday's chaos, the streets were quiet again on Tuesday. Schools and businesses were shut, and with police nowhere to be seen, the students are acting as vigilantes controlling traffic.
Everyone wants to be a part of this noble social work. I think that's why all of us have come down here to the road.
Garment factories in the country, which supply apparel to some of the world's top brands and are a mainstay of the country's economy, remain shuttered. Amid the uncertainty, Bangladesh has become global companies' next big unknown. For now, it looks like the army has played the cards well. It is talking to the angry youth. Naturally, the attention has shifted to Bangladesh's influential military. Once again, in the history of the country, it is stepping in to clean up the misdeeds of civilian rulers. Today, the protesting student leaders met with the army chief, General Waqar-uz-Zaman. Yesterday, Zaman had appealed to the people, please trust the armed forces. I am taking full responsibility to protect all. He had called for an end to the violence and promised investigation into the deaths of the 300 people killed in the government-led crackdown on demonstrators last month. Zaman held talks with student leaders today. He also held talks with leaders of major political parties, excluding Hasina's long-ruling Awami League, to discuss the way ahead. A lot is still up in the air, but one thing's for certain. The student protesters do not want a return to how things were. Nahid Islam, a key organizer of the campaign against Hasina, said in a video message, and I'm quoting here, any government other than the one we recommended would not be accepted. The coordinators of the student protests have called for the formation of a new interim government with the economist and Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus as its chief advisor. In Dr. Yunus we trust is the message coming from the students. Yunus, who is also known as the banker of the poor, has reportedly agreed to the role. He plans to return to Bangladesh immediately after undergoing a minor medical procedure in Paris. Yunus is also known as the pioneer of the global microcredit movement in Bangladesh. He founded the Grameen Bank, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for helping lift millions from poverty. In 2011, Hasina's government had removed him as head of the Grameen Bank, saying that he had stayed on past the legal retirement age of 60. At the time, thousands of Bangladeshis had formed a human chain to protest his sacking. Then in January this year, Yunus was sentenced to 6 months in prison for violations of labor laws. Him and 13 others were also indicted by a Bangladesh court in June on charges of embezzlement of $2 million from Workers' Welfare Fund of a telecoms company he founded. Although he was not jailed in either case, Yunus faces more than 100 other cases on graft and other charges. Of course, he denies any involvement, describing the accusations against him as very flimsy, made-up stories. On Monday, after Hasina resigned and fled the country, he told an Indian broadcaster that the moment had marked the second liberation day for Bangladesh after the 1971 war. In another interview, he said that Bangladesh had been an occupied country under Sheikh Hasina. Regardless of who forms the interim government, there are challenges galore. The interim government will have to focus on an economy that has struggled to gain its footing since the pandemic. It also came under pressure from curfews and recent internet blackouts. The new government may also have to negotiate with the International Monetary Fund as well as other creditors for more cash to bolster its dwindling reserves. The IMF have approved $4.7 billion loan program to Bangladesh last year. Amid the crisis unfolding in Bangladesh, IMF has said that it would continue to support efforts to ensure economic stability. The situation in Bangladesh remains volatile. We're still waiting to hear when the interim government will be formed. What started out in late June as peaceful protests seeking to abolish government jobs quota turned into deadly unrest, with demonstrators seeking to oust Hasina. She had shown little signs of backing down at the time. She had angered the students by calling protesters as Razakars, a term referring to a Bengali militia that supported the Pakistani army. Her crackdown on the protesters has resulted in the worst violence since Bangladesh was founded. The situation is of course still evolving, and what happens next is far from certain. All we can say is that the sooner a government is formed and law and order is restored, the better it is for the South Asian country. The political turmoil in Bangladesh, it's brought the nation to a standstill, with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fleeing and taking refuge in India. New Delhi is closely watching the situation in Dhaka. Addressing the Indian Parliament, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said India is concerned about the status of the minorities in the nation. Detailing the events that led to the unrest, the Indian Foreign Minister said tensions had been high since the elections in January 2024. Referring to the escalation of violence on the 4th of August, the minister noted that what was particularly worrying was minorities. Their businesses and temples were coming under attack at multiple locations.
Properties of individuals associated with the regime were torched across the country. What was particularly worrying was that minorities, their businesses and temples also came under attack at multiple locations.
On the 5th of August, when the demonstrators continued to protest in Dhaka despite the curfew, he said Sheikh Hasina decided to resign and at very short notice requested India's approval to come to New Delhi. Before addressing the parliament, Dr. S. Jaishankar addressed an all-party meeting as well, attended by prominent opposition leaders. The opposition leaders assured that they stand with the government. Jaishankar said that India is maintaining a wait-and-watch strategy and that the Indian army is also on alert. In the wake of the developments, on the 5th of August, when Hasina landed in India, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a high-level meeting with the Cabinet Committee on Security on the situation in Dhaka. India's border security forces also issued a high alert for its formations along the 4,096-kilometer India-Bangladesh border. Now, to discuss this situation further, we're now being joined by Mr. Shamsher Chaudhary, former diplomat from Bangladesh. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on Gravitas. I wanted to begin by asking you, sir, what is the situation in Bangladesh at the moment?
Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts. As you said, that the last 24 hours has been seismic politically in Bangladesh. The departure of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in such a hurried fashion, not even being given a chance to make a farewell speech to the country, to the nation. And having to deliver her resignation. But I have not seen the resignation letter as such. So I don't know whether we need a written resignation or a verbal one is good enough in this case. To the president, from the president's house, she took a airport. Do you know all the details? So what, since then, because of the 15 years of, suffocating situation in the absence of total democracy, in the country, no freedom of dissent in the political parties. Yes, they were allowed to hold meetings and all that, but the whole election system was so rigged, was so structured that only Awami League could win, and hence major political parties like BNP boycotted the election because they knew what the outcome would be. So you had basically a non-functional parliament where 90% of the members were from the Awami League. So there was no serious discussion. It became a rubber stamp that you see in communist countries. I don't have to name them. You know how it happens there. And then came the quota thing, was like a trigger point. Because in 2018, she herself abolished all quota, which was welcomed by the students, and there was no furor after that. But this time, on a writ petition filed by, I don't know who, they said some children of some freedom fighter, to the court, questioning the legality of the 2018 decision by the Prime Minister herself, which she did on the floor of the Parliament. Anything decided on the floor of the Parliament automatically assumes a legal status, right? So why did somebody have to call that illegal? I do not know. And then the students, started protesting, and the government filed a thing against the High Court decision at the higher court. What was worrying the students, and why is the government, giving so much time to the High Court? The government, the Attorney General, could always ask the Supreme Court that why did you move the day forward, which they eventually did. But by then the damage had been done, because very slanderous or kind of unpleasant language was used against the students. Well, not against the students, but indicating that should I give preference to, not give preference to the descendants of the freedom fighters and give them to descendants of the Razakars.
Right.
So that was interpreted as calling these protesters Razakars. So, and then the government misinterpreted these protester slogans, saying that they are calling this Razakars. Now, after all this disaffection, a sense of relief, which has turned into kind of lack of control in some parts. So there has been vandalism, which I strongly condemn.
Right.
There has been some, not to the extent that I'm seeing in the Indian media on minorities, because I have spoken to a number of minority groups in my district in Sylhet, for example, which is a large minority community. There are many Hindu temples. There has not been one single incident of this nature. I've spoken to the Hindu chief also. I've spoken to my friends among the Hindus. There has been one or two. But mind you, this persecution of minorities, especially Hindus, is not just now. I mean, this is much less than what happened during the Awami League regime.
Right.
When lands belonging to minorities were taken away by the Awami League for setting up their offices. Temples were attacked in Ramu, in Chittagong and all that, and none of them were seriously investigated.
Right, sir.
So this has raised... Yes, sir.
Sorry to interject, sir. I also wanted to understand, sir, of course, as I mentioned earlier, right now there is no government in Bangladesh. I mentioned in my report as well that it's the students who are acting as vigilantes at the moment. That being said, when can we expect an interim government? What happens next? Where do things go from here?
Well, this thing is just about 24 hours old. And the country is functioning. Shops are opening. People are moving around. The president is very much there, which is the constitutional authority at the moment. And so whatever decisions are being made in the government are being made by the president and in his name, which is very legitimate and very constitutional. So they are working on forming an interim government. The couple of issues which I can see as an outsider, I think the students want an interim government that enjoys their support, that reflects their views.
Right.
In otherwise, they're perhaps, I may be wrong, they're perhaps indicating that we don't want a repeat of the old and tested and failed system to continue. One bad apple being replaced by another bad apple.
All right.
We want something totally new. Because this is a new generation. Totally new generation, 54 years since the birth of Bangladesh. They didn't even see what happened in 1971. Right. They don't know what Pakistan is.
All right.
They are very informed people. They're very informed people. They rely on the social media. They do a lot of laptop work and all that. They're aware of a lot of things.
All right. Well, Mr. Chaudhary,
we hope something good will come out of it in the end.
Right, of course, that is the hope, Mr. Chaudhary. That being said, thank you so much for joining us on Gravitas with your insights on this. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
now shift our focus to a significant meeting in Iran that has the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape and global security in West Asia. On Monday, senior leaders of Iran and Russia convened in Tehran amidst the backdrop of Iran contemplating its options for retaliatory attacks against Israel. As per reports, Sergei Shoigu, the Secretary of Russia's Security Council, met with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian and top security officials. The Iranian president allegedly conveyed to Shoigu, an ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, that Iran desires to strengthen its ties with Moscow, its key strategic partner. Iranian media reported that the country had asked for advanced radars and air defense systems from Russia as it braces for a possible war with Israel. According to a New York Times report, Iran's request has been accepted and Russia has started the process of delivering this equipment. Iranian state television broadcast footage of Shoigu and Iranian Army Chief Major General Mohammad Bagheri greeting each other and holding one-on-one meetings before joining a larger conference with Russian delegates and Iranian military officials. According to Iran's state media, Shoigu stated that Russia is ready for full cooperation with Iran on regional issues, while General Bagheri described the relationship between their nations as deep, long-term and strategic, which will further expand under Iran's new government. Russia has strengthened its ties with Iran since the onset of its war with Ukraine and is reportedly preparing to sign a wide-ranging cooperation agreement with them. As per reports, earlier this year, Iran provided Russia with a large number of surface-to-surface ballistic missiles. In Washington, State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller addressed Shoigu's talks in Tehran, expressing skepticism about Russia playing a constructive role in easing tensions in West Asia. Miller mentioned that Washington had been sending messages through diplomatic channels urging countries to advise Iran against escalation in West Asia. Despite Russia's economic and cultural ties to Israel, policy analysts said that Russia cannot afford to deny Iran's request due to its reliance on Iranian drones in Ukraine. Iranian state media reported that Pezeshkian emphasized Russia's support for Iran during difficult times, highlighting their shared goal of promoting a multipolar world for greater global security and peace. Russia has condemned the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and called for restraint to prevent a wider regional war in the Middle East. Iran, on the other hand, has vowed to punish Israel. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has ordered a direct strike on Israel, although Israel is yet to claim responsibility for the assassination. Khamenei's order came just hours after Haniyeh was killed in an explosion at a guest house in Tehran while visiting Iran for the new president's inauguration last week. As per reports, American and Israeli officials anticipate a coordinated attack on Israel by Iran and its regional allies known as the Axis of Resistance, which includes Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. According to a report by the American news website Axios, U.S. intelligence expects a scenario involving two waves of attacks on Israel, with one wave from Iran, the other from Hezbollah. The report further stated that during a White House meeting with President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris and the National Security Team, intelligence indicated that Iran and Hezbollah remain uncertain about their precise plans, describing their response as a work in progress. As tensions mount, we must also ask, is Iran using Russia as a shield for possible de-escalation? Historically, Iran has often opted for a restrained eye-for-an-eye approach rather than outright escalation. As per reports, even the missile and drone attacks carried out by Iran in April following an attack by Israel on its embassy in Syria were preceded by warnings to neighboring countries, allowing Israel and its allies time to prepare, thereby reducing the impact of the attacks. This strategy allowed Iran to appease its public while enabling Israel to thwart the attacks, a win-win for both countries. As per experts, Iran may be leveraging its ties with Russia and the newly acquired military equipment as bargaining chips in potential peace talks with Israel and the United States, potentially avoiding further escalation. The meeting between Iran and Russia in Tehran marks a significant shift in West Asia's geopolitical landscape. With Iran receiving advanced military equipment from Russia, the potential for escalation in the region increases. Whether Iran uses its alliance with Russia as a shield to de-escalate tensions with Israel, or this alliance further deteriorates the already volatile dynamics of West Asia, we don't know. The coming days will be critical in seeing how this situation unfolds. The Indian rupee has hit a record low. It closed at 83.95 per US dollar. So what does a falling rupee mean for you? To answer this, we must first ask, what do we really mean by a fall in the rupee? We mean a fall in its ability to buy the US dollar. Today, you need to spend 83.95 Indian rupees to buy a US dollar. Not too long ago, you could buy a US dollar for 83.8 Indian rupees. If the rupee continues falling, you would need to spend an even higher amount to buy the dollar. Earlier, the $100 product you could buy for 8,380 rupees. You will now have to spend 8,390 rupees for it. When you look at this on a macro scale, the fall in rupee adds to inflation, because crude oil becomes more expensive. This increases transportation cost, which ultimately impacts prices, starting with your vegetables, fruits. They all become more expensive. Same with imported goods, the likes of your phones, laptops. When the value of the rupee falls, businesses spend more to import these electronic items, and they pass on that cost to you. In short, a fall in the rupee impacts your household budget. Also, if you're traveling abroad, your budget goes for a toss, because chances are you will be carrying US dollars with you. Now, when you go to get your forex, you will have to spend more in order to get your desired amount of dollars. The same is the case when students paying tuition fee of a foreign university. All in all, a falling rupee is not good news for you, which is why we must ask, why is the rupee falling? Because of the bloodbath in global and Indian stocks. Asian currencies have weakened. Malaysian ringgit, for example, has dropped 1%. There are fears of a looming recession in the United States. The American job data does not look bright. We told you about it yesterday. There's also tensions, concerns about a widening war in West Asia. These factors combined have spooked investors. They are now selling stocks. All of this is contributing to the fall in rupee. Next question. Will this trend continue? Chances are it will. At least so believe the experts. Barclays predicted the rupee to decline to 83.85 per dollar. Morgan Stanley predicts that the rupee will fall to 85.2 for a dollar in 1 year. So what should you do in the face of a falling rupee? Revisit your budget. If possible, cut down on discretionary spending. Also, if you can, look at items whose prices are rising and try and substitute them. That said, you must keep in mind that despite headlines of a falling rupee, you need not panic. The Indian rupee has remained one of the world's most stable currencies. India's central bank has kept a tight rein on the rupee, and the Reserve Bank of India is likely to intervene in order to stop a sharp dip. Let's shift our focus now to the United States. Kamala Harris has kept the name of her running mate under wraps till the last moment, just like Joe Biden did in 2020. And just a short while ago, Harris chose Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz says that it is an honor of a lifetime to join Kamala Harris in her campaign. But who is Tim Walz? The 60-year-old was born and raised in small-town Nebraska. The teacher-turned-politician has had an uncommon resume for a VP pick. He started his career as a teacher in China, then went on to become a high school teacher in Minnesota, where he was part of a faculty and stood for gay rights in 1999. Long before even the Democratic Party advocated for LGBTQ+ rights. He also served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. Walz first ran for office in 2006. He supported unions, managed to flip a Republican-leaning congressional district. Then, in 2018, he ran for governor and won, then defended the seat successfully in 2022. He is now the chair of the Democratic Governors Association and has been a national campaigner for Harris even before he was considered as a VP pick. It will be a busy week from the word go. The Democrat duo will kick off the tour to battleground states, 7 states under 5 days. It will start from Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris is expected to walk in with her vice presidential pick. From Pennsylvania, the duo will head to Michigan and Wisconsin. These 3, along with Georgia and Arizona, are the same states Biden had flipped blue in 2020. Harris is also expected to make stops in North Carolina, which Biden lost by a slim margin, and lastly Nevada, where Democrats won narrowly in 2020. And in the latest, Republican nominee Donald Trump's team has slammed Walz as a left-wing radical. Unlike others, Harris did not have much time to choose her running mate. It seems like eternity, but Biden quit the race just 2 weeks ago. Harris has chosen Walz, the governor of Minnesota. It's also important to note that Minnesota is not a swing state. The state has not elected a Republican since 1972. But there's another thing here. We told you about the looming fears of a recession in the United States. Trump will weaponize the latest predictions of recession by Goldman Sachs. We can expect that in the coming days. Can Kamala Harris and her running mate maintain the edge over low and middle income voters? We will have to wait and watch. All right, we now move on to a rising wave of political and religious persecution in China that is compelling its citizens to seek refuge far from home. Specifically, we are examining the surge of Chinese Muslim students seeking asylum in Australia and New Zealand, a trend that reveals the ongoing socio-political climate in China. According to recent data from the Australian Department of Home Affairs, over the last 5 years, at least 3,500 Chinese students have applied for political asylum in Australia. This figure dwarfs the asylum requests from any other nationality and continues to grow. The personal stories of these asylum seekers in a report in radio network Voice of America paint a vivid picture of the oppression they face. A student from central China who fled to Australia in 2022 provides a stark example. He describes how mounting pressure on China's communist regime fueled a desperate yearning for freedom among its people, adding that being a Muslim in China is not just a matter of faith, but a source of severe restriction and repression in China. The Chinese government's stranglehold on religious practice, he said, created an environment of fear and persecution, forcing individuals to seek refuge in countries where they can freely practice their faith. This issue also extends beyond Australia. In neighbouring New Zealand, the number of Chinese students applying for asylum is also rising sharply. As per reports, in 2024, New Zealand saw a threefold increase in asylum applications from Chinese citizens. This spike mirrors the growing desperation among Muslim Chinese students to escape repression. A family from Xinjiang shared the story of the ethnic and religious persecution occurring in China, adding that they fear the possibility of arrest, forced labor, and even disappearances if they return to China. They stated in reports that their relatives and friends in Xinjiang have been detained in camps solely due to their Islamic faith. According to a former Deputy Immigration Minister for Australia, there has been a historical shift in the profile of Chinese students arriving on student visas. Earlier, they were primarily middle-class individuals seeking economic advancement, and now a growing number are driven by the need for political asylum. This change reflects a broader concern about human rights violations in China, particularly regarding personal freedoms and individual rights. Refugee organizations in Australia also pointed out that the reasons cited by Chinese asylum seekers are diverse but interconnected. They cite fears of repression, human rights abuses, and uncertain future. These factors collectively contribute to a sense of danger and anxiety about returning to China. All right, let's shift our focus now. Ahead of the German state elections, the grannies against the right are mobilizing in the country, with the far-right Alternative for Germany tipped to be the strongest party in the state parliament if it wins the September 1st election. The Grannies Against the Right movement is calling on people to come together to ward off the possibility. Several hundred demonstrators marched through the state capital on Saturday. The first Grannies Against Right groups were founded in Austria in 2017. It was when the centre-right government of Sebastian Kurz entered into a coalition with the far-right Freedom Party of Austria. Germany soon had its branch in 2018. Since then, the movement has grown. It aims to show that right-wing ideas are not an alternative even for the older generation. The movement now has around 30,000 active members in campaigns against racism, misogyny and anti-Semitism. In 2020, the Central Council of Jews in Germany awarded the Grannies Against the Right their Paul Spiegel Prize for civic courage. High above the clouds on the towering peaks in Nepal, an innovative solution is set to transform the way we tackle one of the world's most daunting challenges: high-altitude garbage collection. This autumn, heavy lifter drones will soar to heights of about 6,812-meter tall Amadablam, south of the Everest. Here's the report. Take a look.
These drones, built by China's leading drone manufacturer, Dajiang Innovations, or DJI, will take on tasks traditionally handled by Sherpas. The aim is to reduce the risks these local guides face on the dangerous terrain. The introduction of drones aims to not only ease the burden on human labor, but also significantly cut down on casualties, particularly in the perilous Khumbu icefall area. DJI drones will also be deployed to Everest, buzzing like swarms of bees as they deliver essential supplies and remove trash. This comes after a successful test in April, where the DJI Flycart 30 demonstrated its capacity to airlift 234 kilograms per hour, a job that usually requires at least 14 porters. The initiative was formalized through a tripartite memorandum of understanding between the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee, the Khumbu Pasang Lamu Rural Municipality, and Airlift Technology Private Limited. With climate change exposing more garbage and in some cases even bodies long buried under ice, the urgency for efficient waste management in the Everest region has never been greater. Considering that in recent years, reports have emerged of the world's tallest peak being littered with frozen waste and human remains on the Everest. Being one of the most popular tourist attractions of the world, the Everest has also become home to discarded ropes, climbing equipment, oxygen bottles, and human excrement. The waste is locked in frozen layers at the 8,000-meter altitude. In many instances, bodies have been recovered during the cleanup missions at the inhospitable terrain as well. Despite concerns that the use of drones might impact jobs, local officials emphasize that the primary goal is to save lives. Sherpas will still play a crucial role, especially in higher camps where drones cannot operate efficiently. The integration of drones is seen as a life-saving measure, with the potential to replace riskier helicopter missions and make high-altitude climbing safer and more sustainable. As the project moves forward, Nepal stands on the brink of a new era in high-altitude operations, combining traditional mountaineering expertise with cutting-edge technology to protect both its natural wonders and the people who brave them. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Indian badminton legend Prakash Padukone has triggered a massive storm after calling on athletes to be accountable for their results at the Paris Olympics. Padukone's comments came after his ward Lakshya Sen went down in the bronze medal match of the men's singles.
India's haul at the Paris Olympics has been disappointing so far, with only 3 medals coming from the sport of shooting. Some of India's biggest medal hopes went home early after disappointing performances. Badminton has been on the Olympic podium for every game since 2012, but 2-time medalist PV Sindhu fell in the second round, while men's doubles contenders Satvik Sairaj Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty bowed out in the quarterfinals after blowing a 1-game lead. Sen wasn't expected to challenge for a medal, but went on a dream run before suffering a meltdown in the bronze medal match against Lee Zijia.
I'm not happy. Vimal is also not happy with with the 4th position of Lakshya. Because he could have definitely got a medal. So a lot of people might say Axelsen might say he's the next best, but that's not good enough. I mean, there was a possibility. If he had lost comfortably to Christie, okay, then then it was a different issue. But having come this far, when he had an opportunity, he was leading, and of course, he's still young. So, but he must realize it himself, and not give it as an excuse or I want more. Okay, then you work harder. Take the responsibility and work hard.
Padukone's harsh words haven't gone down too well. He has been accused of throwing his ward under the bus. 3-time Olympian Ashwini Ponnappa reacted on social media with this statement, and I quote, "If a player wins, everyone jumps on the bandwagon to take credit, and if they lose, it's just the player's fault. You can't suddenly push the player under the bus and blame it all on the player," unquote. While India's first individual Olympic champion Abhinav Bindra came out in support of Sen, Bindra told Rev Sports, and I quote, "This is a sport. Not everyone can win, but in their relentless pursuit, they have already proven themselves. There will always be a time to reassess, but that time is not now," unquote. The Indian contingent was expected to reach double digits in Paris, and the results have not gone according to plan. Padukone's strong opinions hit the nail on the head. India's Sports Ministry, the Sports Authority of India, and the Target Olympic Podium Scheme, TOPS, has extended all possible support to Olympic athletes. There is further support from private organizations such as Olympic Gold Quest, JSW Sports, and Go Sports.
I hope the players also realize, that they have a responsibility, that they need to, when you ask for certain things, I think they also need to deliver. So, if they don't deliver, then I think, you need to be a little firm with the, maybe the federations can be, or the government, of course, it's not very easy, because we have so few stars. So, it's, if you don't give them something, then it becomes an issue. So I think the press also has to play an important part. I'm not saying that don't make them stars.
We're often asked here during the Olympics why India, with a population of close to 1.5 billion, wins only a handful of medals. Now, India's sporting ecosystem prioritizes elite athletes, and that model isn't sustainable in the long run. No expenses spared, and every possible support is given to ensure that athletes stand on the Olympic podium. When that doesn't happen, questions need to be asked, and without bias. In Paris, this is Digvijay Singhdeo for WION.
Well, the biggest story for India on day 11 of the Paris Olympics is coming from the sport of wrestling. 2018 Asian Games gold medalist Vinesh Phogat is just one win away from a medal after pulling off an upset for the ages in the 50 kilograms category. 1.4 billion Indians will be glued to their TV screens when a semi-final bout begins later today. Phogat was handed the most difficult draw possible. She started her campaign against the legendary Yui Susaki. The Japanese is a 4-time world champion and had never lost a match in her international career. She had a winning record of 82-0 and didn't concede a point en route to her title in Tokyo. The odds were against Phogat, but she had made impossible possible many times, and this was no different. The 29-year-old strategized her bout to perfection. She defended well in the beginning, but was still 0-2 behind after receiving penalty for passivity. Phogat made a brilliant comeback, turned the game on its head by securing a takedown. She won the match with a score of 3-2. Phogat faced Ukraine's Oksana Livach in the quarterfinal. The ace Indian wrestler controlled the match from the start and was the better wrestler. The Ukrainian did try to fight back, but Phogat won the match 7-5. She will now lock horns with 2023 Pan American Games winner Yunelis Guzman. A few months ago, it was almost unthinkable that Phogat would compete at the Paris Games, given the year she had had in 2023. Phogat was at the forefront of the protest against the former Wrestling Federation of India chief Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, who was accused of sexual harassment. Her activism saw her sleeping on the pavements of New Delhi for 40 days, almost sacrificing her medals in the Ganga River. She underwent knee surgery before she returned to the match. Her struggles didn't end there. Phogat had to lose a few pounds as she dropped down a weight category because Antim Pangal had already secured a quota in her pet 53 kg division. Despite these hurdles, she is now just a few steps away from achieving her Olympic dream. You must have heard people say that revenge is best served cold. But what happens when it's plated to you when you're in a vegetative state in the ICU? One such story is doing the round of Chinese social media, where a woman has pulled the plug on her dying husband. Why? Because he cheated on her. All of this happened in China's Liaoning province. The man was all of 38 years old. He used to live with his wife until he left her to live with another woman while still being married. But there the man suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. It was severe. The man was admitted to the ICU. He needed a surgery. But in order to perform the surgery, the hospital staff needed the consent of the man's family. The woman he had been living with disappeared from the hospital, so the staff started looking for the man's family. The wife was then traced, informed about her husband's condition and the need for surgery. When the wife arrived at the hospital, she was told that her husband is in very critical condition. He's currently in coma, that's what she was told, and had a slim chance of making it even after surgery. She was also told that the surgery was going to be expensive and the life support he was on was only temporarily going to keep the man alive. So what next? The doctors needed the wife's consent for the surgery. That was, after all, the best bet at reviving the vegetative man. The wife's decision left the doctors appalled. She told the doctors she was not going to sign the consent form for surgery. What's more, she asked the hospital to remove her husband's life support system. This was not what the doctors were hoping for. They're used to seeing families spending all they have and taking every possible chance to save their loved ones. So what made the wife decide against saving her husband? She had a story to tell. The wife said her husband had been unfaithful for over a decade. He had left her to live with another woman and he never helped her financially. The wife said she no longer had any feelings for the husband, which is why she decided against taking the last chance at reviving him. This story managed to make its way to the Chinese social media, and now almost every netizen has a view on it. Some people are calling the wife heartless. Others believe karma got the unfaithful husband. Above all, many are citing this story as a lesson for why you should not wrong your partner. And on Gravitas Recall tonight, on this day, in the early morning hours of the 6th of August 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from the island of Tinian and headed towards Japan. This mission, led by Colonel Paul Tibbets, was one of the most significant and perhaps the most chilling events of World War II. At 8:15 a.m. local time, the Enola Gay dropped an atomic bomb codenamed Little Boy over Hiroshima. The bomb exploded with an unprecedented force, causing massive destruction and loss of life. Buildings were flattened, fires raged throughout the city. The immediate impact of the bomb killed an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people, with many more dying later from radiation exposure and injuries. By the end of the year, the death toll had surpassed 100,000. Hiroshima was not only a bustling city with a civilian population of almost 300,000, but it was also an important military center housing about 43,000 soldiers. The bombing of Hiroshima marked the first use of nuclear weapons in warfare and had profound implications for the future of global military strategy and international relations. The devastation prompted Japan to eventually surrender, bringing an end to the World War II. However, the human cost and ethical considerations surrounding the use of atomic bombs have been subjects of extensive debate and reflection ever since. And with that, we call her wrap on this edition of Gravitas. Thank you so much for tuning in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India, Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in. Massive turning point in the West Asia conflict. Israel opens Iran war front. Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh killed in Tehran, a targeted attack during a visit to Iran for the new president's inauguration. Nearly 2,000 kilometers away in Beirut, Israel kills a top Hezbollah commander in a targeted strike. West Asia on the boil, war clouds darken, and the threat of a wider conflict grows bigger than ever.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 PM IST, 1 PM GMT.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital